You're live, your worship.
All right, good evening, Sasha. Thank you very much for doing that and setting us up here. Good evening, members of council and members of our staff and members of the public. This is the Clearview Township Council meeting for Monday, January the 17th, 2022. So our council met at an in-camera session at 4 o'clock. Our agenda is underway, so we're going to start with item number 2. But before we do, I just want to acknowledge that we have our land acknowledgement. Again, it is an optional thing to read. I'm going to read it again as it's sort of new, and it is optional. It's not required to be read at every meeting, but it's certainly an opportunity for the chair to read it and open the meeting. So I'll do that, and then we'll move to item number 2. So our land acknowledgement, I would like to begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards and caretakers of the land. We acknowledge that Clearview Township is located within the boundaries of Treaty 18, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, the Titatanati, and the Wendat, and is the home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples as part of the intricate nationhood that reaches across Turtle Island. At this time of truth and reconciliation, we welcome the opportunity to work together towards new understandings and new relationships and ask guidance in all that we do. All right, Council, we're going to carry on. I do know that Councillor Lamers did contact me and say that he was going to be late. So if he does join us, we'll welcome him back to the meeting or to the meeting. But we do have quorum, so we will carry on with the members of council that are present with us today. Item number 2 is our approval of the agenda. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated January 17, 2022 as presented. Can I have a mover and seconder on the motion, please? Ms. Deneen and Mr. Broderick. And any additions to the agenda? Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 3 is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Is there anything on the agenda for members of council? If anything comes up during the council meeting, please bring it forward. We'll deal with it immediately and look after it. Okay, item number 4 is our public participation. Just for the record, we did have a number of public participation comments that were submitted to us. I'll read the preamble and then we'll make some commentary about some of these. So the preamble is, be advised that comments and views expressed under public participation are not the views of the Township of Clearview Council or the administration. We ask that written comments be received until noon hour on January 17, 2022 for this meeting, and that they be received by noon hour on any of our council meeting dates, regular council meetings. That the submissions be received after 12 noon will not be added to the council agenda. And to submit a comment to the public must use the public participation portal on the Clearview Township website. It is available on our website as the correct portal to use. We did have, as I said, 10 submissions that did use the correct portal. And so we thank those members of the public for doing that. Interestingly enough, all of the submissions had to do with the Collingwood Street Bridge. Collingwood Street Bridge is on our agenda. Just for the record, there are 2 Collingwood Street bridges. The first one is the bridge that was owned by the county of Simcoe. The second one is the one that's a little further south, which is actually more of a culvert than a bridge, but it is a bridge nevertheless. And it is on our agenda today to discuss, and members of council will have an opportunity to discuss that a little later. We do have our engineer with us as well to answer any questions of members of council as we discuss the outcome of the Collingwood Street Bridge. So I do want to acknowledge that we did receive many letters from residents that all indicated that they lived in and around that area and or were permanent residents on that street. I do want to also acknowledge that some of the comments were related to Caroline Street in regards to traffic and the movement of traffic on Caroline Street if council were to decide to not repair the Collingwood Street Bridge. So that was a good commentary that was received in there as well. So council will be discussing these items, or this item, a little later on. We want to thank the members of the public. I also want to make comment that Councillor Patterson and I had a brief conversation this afternoon. And you know, it is unfortunate that we're in the time of COVID, that this discussion and this very important expensive item may have been discussed in an in-person town hall meeting that Tom is quite known for hosting, and we would have had an opportunity to have a more up close and personal discussion about the issues surrounding this. But I would remind the public that there's going to be plenty of opportunities to discuss this project moving forward, as there are budget submissions and well as the potential for going to tender on any of the works that may be decided a little later on in the meeting. So there is always going to be opportunity for the public to chip in on their comments on this. So we appreciate those that did. All right, members of council, I'm prepared to move on to item 5, deputation and presentations. We have none tonight. And item 6 is meetings, and we do not have any public meetings or planning public scheduled. And so then item number 7 is our approval of the council meeting minutes. Recommendation be it resolved that council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the minutes for January the 10th, 2022 council meeting as presented. Can I have a mover and seconder on the minutes, please? Mr. Broderick, Ms. Deneen. All right, any questions on the motion? I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Thank you. The motion carries. The minutes are received. Item 8 is business arising from the minutes. Anybody have any business from the minutes that they'd like to bring forward? Not seeing any. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to communications from the mayor. As I mentioned at the top of the meeting, council did meet an in-camera session. We have nothing to report from the in-camera session at this time. Item 9.2 is the Crime Stoppers of Simcoe Dufferin, Muskoka have a flag raising and a proclamation request that they'd like to bring forward for the month of January. I know the month of January is, gosh, it's almost over, but we certainly do want to bring forward this flag raising and support Crime Stoppers. So, members of council, I do have a motion here that I'll read and ask for a mover and seconder. Recommendation be it resolved that council of the Township of Clearview hereby support the request for the proclamation of the month of January as Crime Stoppers Month, and that the Crime Stoppers flag be raised for awareness for the remainder of January at the Clearview Emergency Hub. I have a mover and seconder on that. Where are we at? Broderick, seconded by Burton, Deputy Mayor Burton. Thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? That carries unanimous again. Thank you very much. So, Mr. CAO and Mr. Fire Chief, we will arrange to do that immediately, as soon as we possibly can. Okay, we'll get that flag raised. Item number 9.3, Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Resources, and Forestry. Proposed changes to the Aggregate Resources Act regarding excess soil. That's a information item. There will be a discussion, I believe, at the province in regards to that. Anybody have any questions on that? Yes, Mr. Burton, go ahead.
Yes, I'm wondering if our CAO or anybody from our planning department know when this is going to be effective. I mean, I see the purpose of it. I think it's an important thing to do. I know we require fill permits at this time for anybody bringing in fill, but now that it has to be tested and all that, do we know when that's actually going to be implemented?
We'll defer to the CAO and also Dan Perot, because I believe Dan has worked on this as well. Go ahead, John.
I can't give you the date when it'll be implemented. I was just going to check the document again. Perhaps Dan might have that off the top of his head.
Hello, Dan.
Good evening, Your Worship. Just looking at the environmental registry right now, the commenting period is January 10th till February 24th. So that's still in a commenting period. I'm looking into this a little bit. I believe the main purpose of this is just to get the two ministries aligned. The Ministry of Environment's new excess soils regulations did take effect January 1st. So this, in rehabilitating licensed pits, will just align with those regulations as excess soil regulations. So really a formality that I can see. It's more to do with that people that are rehabilitating pits with excess soils that are following the Ministries of Environment's guidelines. I think that's the main purpose of the changes.
All right, thank you, Dan. Yeah, that's a good review. I think you're bang on there. Barry, anything further? Deputy Mayor?
No, that's perfect. Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, well, we'll certainly be monitoring that. Very good. Anything further then, members of council? If not, I have the recommendation be it resolved that council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive the communications from the mayor for information. I have a mover and seconder on receive motion. Mr. Walker and Mr. Broderick. Mr. Walker and Mr. Broderick. All those in favor? Thank you. Carried. All right, council, we are at council reports and community information. Actually, sorry, we're going to go to county reports for information. Deputy Mayor, we did have a pretty good council meeting. Yes, go ahead. I know you want to speak. We did have a pretty good county council meeting last Tuesday. There was a lot of information there. It was a joint session of both a regular council meeting and a committee of the whole meeting. And I guess the good news is that the information is being released today in regards to the opportunity to change out your garbage containers. If you wish to change out your containers, that information is now on their simcoe.ca/carts, I believe it is. From memory, I didn't write it down. I should have, but I did read the information. So that information is coming. So those that are looking to do those exchanges with various sizes of carts will have an opportunity to review that online. Mr. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
You stole part of my thunder because that's
Well,
exactly
okay.
that's what I was going to announce, that carts can now be exchanged, and I believe it's carts at .simcoe. Anyways, if you go on the website or if you simply call the number, the customer service number, they'll be able to guide you in the direction to go. So you'll be able to exchange your carts for various other sizes. The other comments I wanted to make was at our county council meeting, committee of the whole and county council joint meeting. A motion was passed approving Clearview's request to make an amendment to the Safe Water Drinking Act in concerns to our new well that's being put in on Klondike Park Road. So that was mentioned and approved at county council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That's correct, and very happy to see that was approved at county council. And we received the support of the county as we move forward with this water project that's happening here in the township, and going to bring a better or a larger volume of water capabilities to our systems in Stayner. Just to back up on the carts, you're right. It is carts.simcoe.ca. And I did it the other way as well. I went to simcoe.ca/carts and it went there as well. So both work. There you go. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that program. So that's great. All right, members of council. Now we are at our ward reports. If anybody has some ward reports, we're going to start with Councillor Patterson. You're the first one on my list this time. So it's going to go Councillor Patterson, then Deputy Mayor Burton, and then Councillor Deneen. So Councillor Patterson, you're up first.
Thank you very much. So top of mind, obviously, coming into the discussion tonight was the Collingwood Street Bridge. So I appreciate all the comments that I had on the phone with people and the emails that were sent in, and some of them appeared as submissions in our public participation. And hopefully we will move in a direction tonight to get that resolved. And of course, I continue to have discussions in preparation for our budget. And I remind the public that our final budget workshop, I think proposed, is this Wednesday. And of course, speed reduction motion and some public safety issues are still yet to be talked about. So I look forward to that. That's a publication. I think that is my report.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Stay safe out there and stay warm. Deputy Mayor Burton is next, then Councillor Deneen, and then Mr. Broderick. Go ahead, Barry.
I would just like to follow up to your question about Councillor Lamers. You just sent me a text saying he is still in the dentist chair. So he'll be joining us when he's out of the dentist chair. Not a whole lot to add. I've also received numerous emails about the Collingwood Street Bridge, and have been communicating with our local residents on that issue. And of course, at county, I attended the county's economic development meeting as well. And this week I'll be doing the accessibility committee meeting for the county as well. So that's about it. Just weathering the deep freeze and the snow.
All right. Thank you very much, Barry. You stay warm as well. Councillor Deneen, how's things over on the Ottawa Side Road?
Snowy, that's for certain, but it could always be worse, right? It's not quite as cold as I thought it was out, but just the same, it's cold. I don't have much more to report than anyone else has either. We had an Ottawa Hall meeting. You were there in attendance. We're keeping our fingers crossed that we're going to be able to have a beer and cider event in April. But of course, we're just being on the hopeful side of that right now. So that's about all I've got going on, and more of that to come. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Deneen. Absolutely. I look forward to that event, and thank the volunteers that work on that. So Councillor Broderick, you're next, then Councillor McKechnie, and then Councillor Walker. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Your Worship. Similar to everyone else's, now I did attend the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting on January the 11th, and also on the 11th, the Creemore BIA planning meeting. And that's about it for me, Your Worship.
All right. Stay warm out there, John. Hopefully
Will
the
do.
snowmobile trails will open up soon for you. Very good. All right. Councillor McKechnie, you're up next, and then Councillor Walker. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing to report from Ward 2, but if I might, when you speak, Your Worship, I noticed we got a few emails from residents on County Road 9, and directed to yourself and to County Council. When will that be discussed at County Council?
I'll tell you what, I have not had a response to that question I asked. So how about the Deputy Mayor? Barry, did you get an answer on that?
I have not got an answer yet, but just to realize that motion went through and got to county staff just prior to the holiday season. That what will happen is that request will then go to staff. Staff will do a report. So it'll take time for staff to do a report. Then it'll come forward at county council with our request, and in that request, staff will have included their recommendations. So I suspect it's going to be, the first or second meeting in February that we'll probably see that come forward. I don't have a definite date, but it does take time for them to get their reports together and everything. So.
Okay.
Councillor
Thank you.
McKechnie? Yeah.
Yep, that's good. Thanks. Just
All right.
curious.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Doug. You stay warm as well. Councillor Walker, how are you doing over there?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Nothing really to report other than stage 2 has kept us basically inside again, and only 1 week from their last board reports. And watching breakfast television this morning and looking at the mess Toronto was in with their multi-lane highways, I consider ourselves in the snow belt very lucky of what we received today. Certainly wasn't what looked like they were having to deal with in the city of Toronto and the southern part of the province. So just grateful I live where we live in Clearview. Wonderful spot.
You bet. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. We do live in a wonderful spot. I'd like to take a moment and just give a big shout out to the volunteers that are working on our outdoor skating rinks. Now we have the New Lowell rink, which is at the New Lowell Park, the publicly owned park, and they're working on that. I know that the firefighters have helped out with that, as well as many volunteers from the community. I was down there yesterday, Sunday, and had a look at it, and there was a lot of really happy faces on there, and they were enjoying the ice surface. And I tell you, the other thing I was noticing, there were actually good social distancing. Oftentimes you would see, the kids that are not skating would be kind of huddled together, hanging off on the boards. They weren't. They were spread out. I was impressed. They were not like all right together. They were spread out. So that was good. Anyway, the point is that the rink looked really good. I also want to compliment the volunteers in Singhampton who work at the Singhampton Community Park. And I know the firefighters at Station 5 have been working on that for some time. And I don't know if you've been up there, Council, to have a look, but they have a Zamboni. Did you know that? They actually have their own Zamboni up there. It's pretty impressive. Good for them. So somebody maintains that machine and keeps it running, and they have a beautiful ice surface up there. So anyway, congratulations to those. I know it's difficult in this stage 2 of the lockdowns that we're involved in, and hopefully things will come out. So that's great to see that there's volunteers that are still helping out in our community. If I can at this time, I do want to mention that it has been a significant day for snow plowing, and I was wondering if I may, through the CAO, ask for Dan Perot to join us for a second. And Dan, just give us an outline on the fact that our staff are out there working every day and round the clock. Basically, we have patrollers that are on the road regularly. Dan, and you just give us an outline on the work that's gone on today with this significant snow event.
Certainly can, Your Worship. I was checking it a few times throughout the day on where our plows are at and how long they've been plowing, but you are correct. You know, I would say this is probably a normal snowfall for this area, not too far off of what the snow that we received just a couple Fridays ago, I think. We got hit in this area quite hard. But all our plows were out and about, fully staffed, sidewalk machines. In fact, for our afternoon crew, we have 3 plows out there right now, just doing some either tidying up or keeping the roads that are open. And yeah, patrol staff will come in at this evening and patrol through till tomorrow, and imagine our plows will be out again early on in the morning to do some final cleanup. So.
All right, and of course that includes the sidewalk plows in our urban centers for sure.
Yep,
I can tell you in Ottawa that the little John Deere tractor goes by here regularly on the Bata Road. I'm impressed to see them doing the sidewalk as well. So yeah, it'll get done, folks, and they're doing the absolute best they can, and they're on it. So we appreciate all the efforts that all staff did to keep those roads open. Thank you, Dan, for your leadership on that. If I can go to the CAO for a minute, John, I know that so we've now been a couple of weeks with our administration center fully locked up as far as the ability for staff or the public to walk in and have walk-ins. Can you give us an outline on anything that's changed or what our prospects are for any change coming there?
So if the public needs to have any of our services at the main office, they'll have to call in and make an appointment, and we'll do whatever we can to either meet them at safe distance in person or deal with it over the phone. We're evaluating the situation this week as we see what happens with the Omicron virus, and we've asked staff to stay ready to open for next week, but we're going to evaluate at the end of this week. So at this point in time, we're closed to people walking in the front doors of the administration center at this time.
All right. So I would ask that you would communicate to all members of council with your decisions at the end of the week on what's going on with the following week, right?
Absolutely. We'll advise council if there's any changes as soon as we're aware.
All right. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And thank you to all the staff that are working from home. It can be difficult, and to try to continue to deliver the level of service that we provide here at the township. And we're very thankful for their efforts. All right, members of council, thank you. We're going to move on in our agenda. Item number 12 is our department reports and bylaws. And so we have several great items here tonight. So Madam Clerk, I think you wanted to bring in a couple of people for this one. This is the hello, Nick. There's Nick Ainley. Nice to see you. Development and subdivision agreement for Ashton Meadows Phase 1A. So I'll read the motion. We'll get a mover and seconder. Then we'll have Nick speak and we'll have any questions. Okay, Sasha, thank you. Be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive report CS 004-2022. It's a development and subdivision amending agreement for Ashton Meadows Phase 1A dated January 17, 2022. And item 2, approve bylaw 22-03, authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute a development and subdivision amending agreement specific to the Ashton Meadows Phase 1A Plan of Subdivision. Can I have a mover and seconder? Mr. Walker, Mr. Broderick, thank you. Nick, I know you've been working on this one for a while. What do you got to say?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so I can provide a brief summary. I understand the applicants are here as well if you do have any further questions, but I'm happy to address them. So if you recall, I believe in September 2021, Council provided final approval and entered into a subdivision agreement for Ashton Meadows Phase 1A. So the current subdivision amending agreement is seeking to amend that agreement, specifically Schedule J of the agreement, which speaks to the issuance of building permits and occupancy for the development. So one of the requirements to issue building permits is for utilities to be available to the subject lands. So it's come to light that while pending, external improvements are required to bring hydro as well as gas utilities to the site. And the applicants are seeking to allow, well, it's pending, it's not there yet. So the applicants are seeking approval to allow building permits to be issued prior to that happening. And this is to ensure that, you know, the development and building timelines for the homes can proceed in order. So that's basically what's before council tonight to consider.
Okay, well, thank you, Nick. Again, it has been a pretty thick file, and I'm glad that there's been a lot of work put into it to make sure that it's done correctly. I see that Nicole is with us. Did Nicole Striglioli, is that how you say it? Striglioli, did you want to join us? I apologize. I've probably done a bad job with that name. How you doing, Nicole?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. I'm here to answer any questions. It's pronounced Scrignoli. It's more intimidating than it looks.
I'll get it right one day for you.
That's okay.
All right, good. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, we're working away on the file with all of the staff at the town, and we're here to build these homes and deliver them as soon as possible to the people who bought them. So we're here to work with you guys and deliver the homes to the homeowners.
You bet. Thank you, Nicole. Members of, Mara Burton's with us. Hello, Mara.
Hi, Your Worship, and hello, council and members of the public. I just wanted to add one thing to Nick's report, and that is to let you know that there will be a restriction on title as part of the amending agreement, so that although the municipality will be allowed to have the developer sell to the builder won't be allowed to then sell to the homeowners until we're sure that we have the hydro and gas in at the property. So just wanted to let you know there is another extra level of protection there.
All right, sounds great. Members of council, any questions to our staff or to the proponent? Mr. Walker, go ahead, Robert.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick, do we have any idea on time frame for hydro and for gas to be put to this location for subdivision to be able to move forward?
Is that Nick or Nicole? Nick?
Well, so I understand that they are working currently on it. I don't know if we have a specific timeline at this point, but Nicole, is there any updates in terms of approximate time frame?
Yep, so right now we're just waiting on the locates for Margaret Street, and they are a little bit behind, but they are pending. We've received a few, but we're just waiting on the locates, and then the work can get started.
Mr. Walker, you comfortable? All right.
Yes, Your Worship, that's fine. I just was hoping it was be sooner than later. That's all. Is exactly what I was looking for. So that's great. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other members of council have any questions to our staff or our proponent? All right. Well, and I'll thank you, Nicole, for joining us. Thank you, staff. Members of council, you have a motion in front of you with a mover and seconder. I'm prepared to call the motion. Those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. Good luck, Nicole.
Thank you.
All the best. All right, council, we're going to move on to item CS 005-2022. This is a site plan approval in regards to 2 Green Gauge Road. I believe, Nick, this is also your file. So I'll read the recommendation and then I'll look for a mover and seconder. And there may be some additional information that we may need to add, but I'll read it nevertheless as it says. Okay, be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, receive report CS 005-2022. It's a site plan approval for 2 Green Gauge Road, Clearview, dated January 17, 2022. And item 2, issue site plan approval to M&H Longview Holdings, Inc. for the construction of an addition to the existing industrial building located on the subject lands construction of a new office building accessory to the site's primary industrial use, and updated stormwater management and parking facility improvements as illustrated in site plan drawing C1 dated November 18, 2021, prepared by Timberwind Timberworks. Item number 3, approved bylaw 22-04, authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the site plan agreement with M&H Longview Holdings, Inc., known as the owner. Okay, to get it on the floor, we'll have a mover and seconder, please. Mr. Broderick, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Nick, I understand that there may be an addition that you would like to put in here. So could you submit to us what you're thinking, and then we'll go with it.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. So we're definitely excited to see this move forward. I've been working through the kind of engineering for quite some time now, and the applicant, Burnsides has confirmed the engineering is cleared. They've met all the other requirements. However, despite their best efforts, while they were assured by their financial institution, the applicant, that they'd be able to have their securities in place by today, unfortunately, I understand that the letter of credit is coming from Montreal, from that Montreal branch of their bank, and wasn't here on time. However, it is expected in the next day or two. So instead of deferring the agreement for another 2 weeks, it is the applicant's hope that they do move forward with approval tonight, with the understanding that the agreement wouldn't be executed by the mayor or the clerk until such time that those securities have been received by municipality. So that's for something for council to consider, where they'd like to approve it on that basis. Staff believes it is a reasonable ask to do so. And similarly, if you did want to approve it, there would be an option to amend the existing recommendation to shore up a bit more of the language to ensure that that agreement wouldn't be executed until such time that securities are in place.
All right, I'll go to the staff person first, Barry, and then I'll come to you. So Sasha, do you want to read your additional comments, and then we're going to have a discussion?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. If the mover and seconder are amenable to a friendly amendment, we're asking that in part 3, after that the mayor and clerk execute the site plan agreement, that we add a sentence there saying once securities have been received by the township.
Broderick is good. Deputy Mayor? Yeah, okay. And Deputy Mayor, did you have a comment you wanted to add?
I was going to make that amendment. I was just going to make that amendment and say, here's the amendment. And so we're good.
Yeah. Well, Barry, you know, and for members of council, because this is a financial issue, Nick worked very closely to try to get this information in time. Obviously, it would normally be attached to it. As I understand it, Nick, the snowstorm has got in the way a little bit, as well as the staffing levels at some of the branches of their banks are also running into a bit of a challenge. So Madam Clerk came up with this recommendation to add this amendment, just prior to the meeting. Actually, I got word of this around 4 o'clock. So hopefully that's comfortable to everybody and fully transparent as to why that additional amendment is on there as a friendly amendment. Any other questions? All right. All right. So members of council, thank you, staff, and thank you, council. All right. We have, I've read it, and I've got a mover and seconder with the friendly amendment, and I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much, everybody. Okie dokie. Moving on to Public Works. We're on page 5. Public Works. This is the Collingwood Street Bridge 6-7 Side Road Options Detailed Estimates. This is a great report as a result of an ask from staff. This recommendation does come with the question for an option. So as is our procedure, I will read the entire motion, and then we'll have a discussion about which option, and then we will apply a mover and seconder. Okay, that's how we do that when we get our options from our staff reports. So the recommendation is, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, receive report PW 002-2022, Collingwood Street Bridge and 6-7 Side Road Options, a detailed estimate dated January 17, 2022, and item 2, direct staff to commence engineering works using option number blank. Those options are option 1, engineering and permit approval for the full replacement of the Collingwood Street Bridge number 161B-71 with a 34-meter span bridge. Or option 2, engineering and permit approval for full depth road reconstruction of concession 5 and 6-7 side road, plus the closure of the bridge and the necessary works required. So because it's an option, we have it on the floor for discussion. Councillor Patterson, I see your card up. Do you want to speak first? Is that right? I see there's some yeses there. So
Yes,
we need to put the motion on the floor as to which option we want to go with.
Right, so I'm prepared to move that we adopt option 1.
Councillor Patterson, thank you. And Deputy Mayor Burton is seconding.
I'm seconding his motion for option 1.
Okay, all right. Is there any discussion by members of council? Tom, I'll get to you in a second. Is there any discussion by any members of council? Mr. McKechnie, on the option discussion? Sorry, yep, there you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I have a question for the clerk. Do we have to vote on these 2 options? Can we, are we allowed to just, if we don't like either option, can we vote no to both options? Or are we sort of limited to these 2 options?
Thank you, Councillor McKechnie. Through your worship to council. As with any motion that's on the floor, you can vote against any motion that's been put forward, whether it's an option report or a standard recommendation report.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Again, just to pause for a second, it is always problematic for council to handle questions of a full motion when it hasn't been fully completed. So that's why the procedure is to discuss it in open as to what the option would be. We'll affirm what the option would be, and then we're going to vote on the entire motion with the now complete motion. So right now we're in a discussion about, we have a mover and a seconder for option number 1. So is there any further questions about option number 1 of this discussion? Tom, I think you wanted to say something.
Well,
go ahead, Tom.
Just for the interest of the public, what we are voting for, option 1, is direct staff to complete the detailed cost estimates for this proposal, to the extent that we would then feel comfortable having and then receiving a report to go to tender on this option. And then that would give an opportunity for more discussion by the public as well as council and staff. And then there's a third opportunity that when 2024, when this project is proposed to be actually constructed, that there would be a discussion prior to that when we're doing the 2024 budget. And once again, that discussion. So I know that some people commented today, and rightfully so, that this is of great public interest, and they would like it to be discussed. And there's opportunities, as it happened tonight, and will happen in 2023 probably, and twice in 2023, as a matter of fact. The tender decision and then the budget decision. So I want to make it clear that this isn't the last time the public will hear it.
Correct.
So,
correct. Yeah, for certain. Well, thank you, Councillor Patterson, for those comments. It's kind of reviewing some of the public submissions at the beginning of our council meeting, and that is the case. And that well, we're working with the best tools we have available to us. This Zoom meeting, for instance. We're doing the best we can to access public access to this, and there will be other opportunities for council or for public to give council their opinions of this project or their recommendations or wishes. So we're it's a difficult one, and I don't mind saying right here that this is exactly why we needed to have this difficult discussion, because this is an expensive project for a to help try to meet some of the transportation expenses and infrastructure problems that we have up there in that area. Certainly concession 5, the 6-7 do have some challenges at times. And this bridge itself, or as I like to call it, the culvert, is going to fail one day, and we do need to address that. So I'm glad that we're finally brought it forward. I have to say that if you guys recall, in our very first council meeting, this was actually brought up in our very first council meeting when we formed this council. Councillor Deneen, you were not there at that meeting, but I'm just saying that at that very first council meeting, we talked about this very project. So it's important that we know that we're trying to do our best to try to, look at these projects and spend taxpayers' dollars in a wise way.
Right.
So that's where we are. Anybody else with any questions or comments about option 1 as presented on the floor? Councillor McKechnie, go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship, it's taking me a little bit of time to unmute myself. I'm using an old computer here. So my question is for Dan. I mean, the option 1, that seems to be sort of the Cadillac version of bridge replacement. Was there no opportunity to replace a bridge at a cheaper cost? And I'm thinking maybe just a single lane bridge or something along that line. And my second question to Dan is, even if we do replace a bridge, we still have to rebuild at some point concession 5. So, I mean, in the report there, it says, okay, I forget how much money it is. It's the cheaper option is to replace a bridge. But I mean, we're still going to be rebuilding concession 5 at some point. So it's not really going to be that much cheaper. So anyway, those are my 2 questions. Is there a cheaper way to build the bridge, single lane, or is there, and also too, will concession 5 still have to be rebuilt at some point? So.
Hi, Dan. Welcome back.
Good evening. Through Your Worship to Councillor McKechnie, for that very reason, I've invited Jeremy Kober from RJ Burnside, who's the author of this brief, to attend tonight's meeting. He is a resident expert on bridges, and he may have some input on why a bridge can or can't be made wider or narrower. But I'll defer that question to him. But I could answer the second question, if you may. That you are correct, Councillor McKechnie. At some point in time, concession 5 would need to be, I'll say, reconstructed. Now, whether it's reconstructed in its current surface, being gravel, we have accounted for that in our, as you can recall, our 5-year gravel resurfacing program, where we include cost in that program to excavate bad subsurface materials and re-gravel them. So, it may take a bit of time. It may take several years to get it, based on the amount of money that we have in our gravel resurfacing budget. But that is the plan, unless council requests that we change the surface of that road to something like a hard surface, asphalt. So that is something that we are looking at, and it's going to take a bit of time as we move forward and continue to resurfacing it on that 5-year program. I hope that answers that part of the question, and maybe Jeremy has some input into the bridge question.
All right.
Thanks,
Dan.
Dan.
Thank you. Jeremy, hello, Jeremy, welcome. You're welcome to turn on your camera if you wish. Otherwise, just join us by audio is fine too. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Just due to my internet capacity at home here, I'll just leave my camera off, as it gets a little laggy when I turn my camera on.
Fair enough.
The joys of rural Ontario internet. Speaking to Councillor McKechnie's question regarding options for the replacement of the structure, I would like to point out first off that the structure, it is a bridge by definition. It is actually, the existing bridge is just over a 14-meter span. So it is does go across quite a large area, quite a large valley there. When we looked at the options for this structure, we did consider replacing the structure with two options we looked at were replacing it with a culvert that would extend out kind of as far as required with 2-to-1 slopes. This would require significant property acquisition. As you're probably aware, that area is also NEC regulated, which means that then we'd be into NEC development permits, compensation for any trees cut down, that sort of thing. Additionally, we looked at replacing with the large span culvert and installing retaining walls to limit any fill slopes going onto private property. Both of those options, based on the quantity of fill that needed to be imported, to additionally help to correct the road profile, which is kind of the main issue why the bridge needs to be so big. Both were more costly than the bridge option. As far as looking at a single lane versus a 2-lane bridge, a single lane bridge generally is not desired, especially on a road there where you have vertical profile challenges. I know the existing bridge is single lane. It's very rare that new bridges constructed in Southern Ontario are single lane bridges, unless it's a kind of a dead end going to serve one or two houses kind of thing. So that kind of is some of the options that we did look at. We did look at, what would intuitively be the cheapest option of replacing it with a culvert. Certainly from a water flow perspective, a culvert is more than adequate. But when you start to take into account the height of retaining walls that would be required, the property purchase, NEC permits, development permits, and compensation for cutting down trees, the culvert and bringing in fill options became more expensive than the bridge option.
All right, Jeremy, then I will refrain from calling it a culvert any further. I feel I've been educated a little bit here, and I appreciate your input on that, but it is a really small structure, and so I've heard staff refer to it as culvert in the past, so I'll refrain from that, and it's definitely a bridge. And as you pointed out, 34 meters is that's a bridge for sure. It is. So, Councillor McKechnie, does that help with your some of your questions that you have brought forward?
Well, it helps me to understand where they're coming from. Not that I agree with it, but anyway, that's I see what he says about a double lane bridge there, because it is a bit of a dip, and I suppose sight lines, and as he says, no one's doing single lane bridges any longer, which is probably a shame, because that adds to the quaintness of the community. I find it's a single lane bridge, especially when you look at that road. It's not very well traveled. It doesn't carry much traffic. Anyway, a single lane bridge would be, I think, add to the quaintness of the community. But anyway, that's fine. I appreciate Dan's comments there regarding concession 5. I just don't think that by going with the option 1 that necessarily we're going that will be the cheapest option, because like I say, at some point we're going to have to reconstruct concession 5 anyway, regardless. So anyway. But that's fine. I appreciate the answers to the questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Councillor McKechnie. And thank you, Dan, and thank you, Jeremy. Now, everybody just stand by. I just want to welcome Councillor Lamers. Hello, John. Nice to see you joining us. We're in discussion on the bridge. So we're at the top of page 5, just in case you're wondering. And nice to have you join us. So if there's any other questions from members of council that they would like to ask in regards to option 1 as presented. Currently, we have a motion from Councillor Patterson, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, for option number 1 to be inserted into this motion. Anything further? All right, if there's nothing, yes, Councillor Patterson, I saw your card. You want something else?
Yeah, not a question, but a comment in considering the options. You recall that when we first saw this in November, the last time we saw it was November 8th, and we passed the motion to get more detailed information. By this time, which we're thankful that we did, we were considering a longer span too, longer than the 34 meter.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And for a lot of the same discussion, land acquisition, etc. I thought the staff did a good job making this a narrower bridge, but a narrower 2-lane bridge and a shorter span fit into the topology. So I think it's I can appreciate that it's a good solution to a tough situation. It's expensive too, and I think we're still getting over the cost shock of all our projects now. So on the point of concession 5, I would ask one question that I think if we were to do the concession 5 now, and only as a single route coming down, as a diversion route from the Collingwood Street, south of 6-7, there would be more work done on concession 5 if the bridge was closed. So my feeling is that right now we can maintain the road as its current as profiles, vertical and curves, but we probably could continue with a little bit more of our regular routines, as Dan mentioned, which we've got built into the forecast already, the 5-year forecast. So that forestalls expensive work on the 5th to some extent. So I think there's.
Thank you, Councillor. If I can, to Dan, we have the road needs study, obviously, which is a serious document that you look at regularly, and I'm sure Jeremy is quite familiar with it as well. That indicates when roads get various levels of work. We also have regular inspections. We have the street view tools that are used for those type of things as well. So there's a lot of questions as to when we would actually have to move to upgrading that particular road. Dan, what's your thought on that, Dan?
Your worship, yeah, kind of the rule of thumb is 400 vehicles per day if we do traffic counts on those. So, I'm not sure when the last time that road was counted, but certainly an exercise that we can undertake fairly quickly to see what the vehicle traffic is like on that road. I don't have that off the top of my head, but the kind of general rule of thumb is about 400, and that could kind of go one way or the other. I know it's a heavy farming community use up that way, so putting any type of harder surface may have an impact on what they do or don't do, especially up further or further south on that road. So it's something that staff can take a look at over the summer and get some more detailed traffic counts to see where we're at with that as a gravel road. So
all right, thank you, Dan. Members of council, anything further? Nothing further. I'm prepared to call it. Madam Clerk, we are only voting at this point just to apply the option. And just to review once again, is moved by Patterson, seconded by Burton. This is option number 1 that will be applied to item number 2 of the recommendation. Anything further? I'm going to call the motion on option number 1. Those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Item number option 1 will now be added to the recommended to the resolution. I'll read the resolution incomplete, and then I'll go to our movers and seconder of option 1 and see if they want to move and second this. Recommendation be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, receive report PW 002-2022 Collingwood Street Bridge 6-7 side road options, detailed estimate dated January 17, 2022. And item 2, direct staff to commence engineering works using option number 1. And mover seconder, Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Burton. I presume we'll go with that, so they're the ones that made that motion. Anything further on this discussion then? All right. One thing I would like to state is that, again, there will be plenty of opportunity for us to discuss this at council. Our staff will now be engaging in a tremendous amount of work to put this project together. And obviously, we'll get to the point where we'll be coming back to council with a tender, and we'll go to tenders and see what we get for that. And we're always surprised when we get our tenders back as to how much things cost. We do all of this by estimates, and then the tenders come back, and they could be higher, they could be lower. Either way. Yes, Mr. Pearl, go ahead.
Yeah, just, Your Worship, just to clarify that, this is probably going to be a multi-year project, and it's anticipated that this comes back in, I'm anticipating perhaps ready for construction in 2024. So staff would obviously have to come back at budget time for 2024 budget. So they cut toward the end of 2023 to approve any type of bridge moving forward.
Yeah.
We'd obviously come back to council at any point in time during this investigation of the engineering, if for some reason there's a need for property acquisition or anything like that, that comes up during the engineering process. So just wanted to point that out, that
Sure.
it's going to come back before we do any type of tendering. This will come back.
Well, for sure.
Budget
I
approval.
only, thank you, Dan. I only said that just because I wanted people to be aware that there will be a process yet that still has to play out in order to get us to actually starting construction. And so it will be a process for sure, and we will get there. On top of all of the infrastructure projects that we have across our township, we could spend millions and millions and millions with lots of infrastructure projects. So this is one of them that's continually, on our agenda, and we want to move on with this. So thank you. Members of council, I prepare to call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. All right, council. Thank you very much for that. Again, like I said, lots of great work ahead on this one. Okay, council, we're going to move on to finance. We've got a request from Jarlett Development. You may recall we had a deputation from the Jarlett Development Group that we're in to talk about a home that a seniors home, long-term care facility that may come to our community. So again, this is also one of those. Oh, hello. Oh, there's Kelly. Hi, Kelly, and Mara Burton as well. Nice to see you. Okay, so for the clerk, again, this is one of those that has multiple options. So similar to the last motion, I'll read the entire thing, and then we'll have a discussion. And I'll look for a mover and seconder on one of these options, and we'll have an. Yes, Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. Actually, when a council member moves and then seconds the option, you don't have to vote on it after that. So once they move an option, it's on the floor, you vote. You don't have to re-vote on the motion.
Okay. It's not what I read when I did this, but thank you. I'll continue to defer to you. I'm going to read the entire motion, and we'll see if we can find an option on the floor. Recommendation be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive report FIN 004-2022. It's a Jarlett Development Charge Reduction Request dated January 17, 2022. And item number 2, the council approve option number blank with respect to the request by Jarlett Health Services. So of those options, we have 4 that have been presented. Option number 1 is no reduction. Option number 2 is transfer 49 care beds DCs from their old facility. Option number 3 is exempt 50% of the care beds. And option number 4 is transfer the 49 bed DCs from the old facility and exempt 50% of the remaining 79 care beds. So I'll put it to our staff. We have a pretty good report, and this was a good request. I'm going to start with Kelly. Kelly McDonald, you work with development charges as a financial side. To Kelly, do you have a comment about some of these options?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I most certainly can't take credit for this report. Mara Burton did the majority of the background work.
I know.
I provided her with the number crunching, so it was definitely a dual department report, simply coming back to council after the request from the delegation from Jarlett. And we sort of looked at all the different options that we could provide to council, and we've got the list of 4 that you see in front of you. And that's where we are today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Ms. Burton, would you like to comment on some of these options that are before council?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I did try to find some of the other projects that Jarlett had done in some other communities, but of course, many of those projects were actually done prior to development charges or long ago that I couldn't actually, look for somebody that had provided exemptions. I can let you know that the town of Midland, where Jarlett's are doing a project right now, it's actually quite lovely, beautiful project. I drive by it regularly. And the town of Midland actually charges the non-residential rate for that project, and they entered into a 10-year deferral agreement with them under the development charges, but the DCs were not reduced. The town of Penetang advised that their council doesn't support reduction in DCs, so they haven't done that there. And then I looked at other municipalities, like I said, with other facilities, and I couldn't find another situation where development charges were reduced for this type of project. Specifically looking at Jarlath. I also can tell you that I did look into the rates that nursing homes can charge, and it is my finding that it is a flat rate that nursing homes can charge. It's in my report somewhere. And I know that was one of the concerns that they raised in regard to competing with the County of Simcoe and their options. But of course, Jarlath's is also a for-profit with their other opportunities that they provide. So this is really very much a political decision, which is why both Kelly and myself did not make a recommendation and really have just provided you the information so that you can discuss that. And then in regard to any of the financial implications for the municipality, which I think if there is exemptions provided, we do have to pay those development charges accounts back from somewhere. So it's not just something that we can just necessarily waive without actually paying for it. So all the numbers are there. And if you have any questions for Kelly and I, we will do our best to answer them.
Yes, Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. That was one point that I had missed. Through your worship to the rest of council, the final page on the report shows you exactly what the reduction is. And Mayor is 100% correct. That does have to be funded from some other source, whether it's a reserve or taxation. So that page is sort of the key page to see what kind of effect it's going to have on either our reserve balances or taxation.
All right. At this point then, if there's nothing further from our staff, please stand by and we will ask questions of you. I will ask any members of council if they have a recommendation of any of the options they'd like to bring forward. Deputy Mayor.
I have a question for our Director of Finance. What is the status of our tax stabilization reserve?
Tax stabilization reserve, Kelly.
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Burton, I think we're around the $500,000 mark. So it wouldn't cover off any of these options entirely. We'd have to look somewhere else.
All right. Mr. McKechnie, did you have a question?
Bear with me. No, I was just going to put forward an option.
Sure. That's what we're having a discussion.
I was going to recommend option number 1, no reductions.
All right. Option number 1 is on the floor at this time. Is there a seconder on the option number 1? Mr. Patterson?
Before I would certainly an option that I would consider option 1, but I'd like to get some advice from both Kelly and Mara in terms of what the impact a decision of approving option number 1 would have in Jarlath's development phases.
All right, I will defer to Mayor Burton to answer that question. But the proviso would be short because I'm looking for a seconder if we're going to debate this. Mara?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Patterson. That's a difficult question for me to answer. I think that would better be a question for Jarlath's to answer. I can recall that when they were here, they did indicate that they had projects in some other communities that they either scaled back or removed altogether, and that it had to make some financial sense for them. And so they were looking to council to help them to make those numbers work. Of course, we don't have their financial information, so I can't speak to it. So it's a difficult question for me to answer. I'm sorry, I can't really do that.
Okay. Councillor Patterson?
Well, like for example, would they, would they be reconsidering? I'm assuming what they're talking about here, senior apartments. Those are totally independent living as part of the complex. Am I correct?
Yes, the senior apartments are independent. Well, I believe they're independent. I'm not sure. They may have some support systems there too. There may be, I'm honestly not sure. Those we did not look at doing reductions because they would basically be apartments, the same as all others. I think the reason that The request came forward for the nursing care in particular is because it is nursing care beds. And those beds are determined by the province of Ontario where they can go. And so that's what they're looking for, I believe, is the reduction in nursing. I'm certain that they would take any reductions the township gave them. And I can't, again, that's not something that staff is recommending. So I think I'm having a hard time answering your question. And I apologize, Councillor Patterson.
And I think we're actually getting beyond the discussion. I'm looking for a seconder. If there's a seconder on option number 1, moved by Councillor McKechnie, looking for a seconder. That will fail. Oh, hang on, Councillor Deneen, are you seconding the motion? Councillor Deneen is seconding the motion. So now we can actually have a good discussion in regards to no reduction. So Mara, that's when you can have opportunity to say anything further you wish, other than what you've already said. You were kind of getting long there, so I want to get back to whether we needed a seconder or not. Sorry
yes, thank you.
that.
I guess all I'm saying is that we don't know what the implications are, whether they will go forward with their project in all or in part. If there are no reductions provided, I honestly can't say. That will be a business decision of Jarlette.
Okay, let's go to Deputy Mayor Burton, then Mr. Lamers, then back to Mr. McKechnie. Deputy Mayor.
My question is, when do they plan to build? Are they going to build in 2022 or are they going to build in 2023? Because if they were going to build in 2023, then I would look at one of the other options, because it's all would depend on how we're going to pay for it. So.
Yeah. Mara, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. They have resubmitted their engineering. There are some revisions to the design, which we have, and their numbers, which are reflected in this report. And they have advised us that they would like to start almost immediately. Now,
Okay.
It will be in phases, as you can see in the report. There are 2 phases to the project. There's I'll just recap. The phase 1A is 96 long-term care bed facility, 23 senior bachelors and 1 bedroom, bachelor or 1 bedroom apartment, my apologies. And then the phase 1B is the expansion of 32 long-term care beds. And I do believe that that may be contingent on whether they get approval for those extra beds or not, that phase 1B. And then the building 2 is 136 1-bedroom senior apartments and 4 2-bedroom senior apartments. And then there's a non-residential area there as well, where they have some other things such as, accessory restaurant. And I think they may have a hairdressing and things like that, so that they can provide services on site to their residents.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, so the question I have now is for Kelly McDonald. If one of the other options were put up, could we, the payment of, the cost to cover that, could that be spread over multiple years, or does it have to be done within the year that the application is done?
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Burton, the development charges are due when they pull the building permits. So it would all depend on how they're going about pulling the building permits. If that bridged 2 years, then we would be able to bridge the DCs over 2 years. But they are due at that time. So if they pulled everything all in the same year, the development charge reserve would have to be paid back in that year.
Okay, Councillor Lamers and then McKechnie. John?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I'm not sure if Mara can answer this one, but who sets the rates for the rooms? Do Jarlette themselves set it, or does the provincial government set it?
I believe for the nursing care beds, the province sets that, but for all of the other uses, so all the other apartments, it's set by Jarlette, by the individual owner of the project.
Go ahead, follow up.
So if we don't give them a rate reduction, they're going to just add it on to their room rates to the residents for the other rooms.
I'm not sure if we know that answer, but you're making an assumption that has plausibility to it. Yeah. Okay, John, nothing further?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Thank you. Mr. McKechnie, back to you. And then I see Tom had his card up. Go ahead, Doug.
So one of the reasons why, I put forward option number one is if we back up a little bit. So Jarlett came to us back, what was it, a year ago? They had this great presentation. They showed us all their pictures. So everything was wonderful what they were going to do. We were excited as a council. The public was excited. And isn't that great? They're going to build this lovely project. And then, a few months ago, they come along and they say, hey, it's a lovely project, but we need a reduction in our development charges. Otherwise, the project won't be viable, financially viable. We haven't seen their numbers, their financial numbers. We're just taking them at their word. We're looking at anywhere from 700,000 to 1.2, 1.3 million if we go with one of the other options. And I'm not willing to do that based on their word. I mean, I think that if I were in private business, I wouldn't do it. I think they could have told us this when they first came to us back a year ago with what they were planning. They could have said, we're planning this, but we're going to be probably looking for some development charges reductions, rather than make this lovely presentation, get everybody excited, and then like 6 months later they say, well, it's not going to be financially viable if we don't get development charges reductions. And none of the other communities do it. I don't think we should do it either. So that's why I put forward option number one. So.
All right. Thank you very much, Councillor McKechnie. I would remind that they did come to us as a result of their interest in building in our community and providing jobs in our community and providing a service of a seniors home in our community. So, they're looking to invest in our community. They're also trying to make their project viable. So I appreciate why they're asking. As Mara points out, they could ask for any type of deduction. They might as well ask. Whether it's actually received is up to this body of council, and that's why it's a political decision. So I see you there, Deputy Mayor. I do have Tom up in front of you, though. So if you don't mind, I'll go to Tom because his card was up first, and then I'll come back to you.
I would defer to Mara if she had something to comment on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mara, you don't have a card.
No, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, and as staff, we're being very careful to try to present this to you in the most neutral way we can. So, please take my comments in the most neutral way possible. So, I just want to let you know that they fairly early on in this process, they did indicate that they were looking for a development charge reduction. However, it was quite some time before they formalized that in front of council. And we are quite a long way down the site plan process as well. So there's a little bit of two sides of the coin to that. The other thing I just want to just let you know, and again, I am not advocating for any particular option, is that there is an option where we transfer the 49 in the existing facility over to the new facility for the care beds, the development charges for that. I want to let you know that when we want to ensure that whatever we do isn't something that is, or at least I would suggest we try to be careful to do something that isn't particularly precedent setting. And I think in this case, this is certainly if somebody else comes down the road that wants to do nursing facilities, they may be asking for whatever it is that council gives, if council gives any kind of recognition of that. But so one of the options is to transfer the 49 beds. Now, so just, as how development charges work, when someone comes back into the existing facility, if they purchase it to operate it as a care facility, they will not have to pay development charges for that unless they add care beds. However, if they transfer that existing care facility, the Stainer Care Center, into an apartment building, they will have to pay residential development charges for each apartment they create. So, and then just pretend that they ever decided to transfer back to some other use or to commercial or whatever, they would have to pay again. So every time you change uses, you have to pay. This is why one of the options on the table is to move the 49 or to exempt the existing 49 care beds to the new facility. However, you should also keep in mind that that care facility is likely was likely constructed prior to 1991, which I believe was the time that development charges came into being. And so I don't think they ever paid development charges on that building. But anyone today who would be transferring that existing facility to some other use would. I just wanted to put it out there so that you were armed with all the information that you need in order to make your decision.
Thank you, Merritt. That explains a lot to me. Councillor Patterson, you comfortable with that, or did you need more?
Well, I'm comfortable with we're getting more information, and I'll get to my point in a second, but I'm struck by how much we don't know that we're voting on tonight.
Right.
So I'm very close to saying I'd like to refer this back to staff and have Jarlette in the room, and let's talk about the things that are important to this community, because I respect Jarlette as an operator, and I'm excited that they are coming to our community, and I don't want to do anything that upsets their plans for our seniors and those that need it. So I want to make sure that I can make the best decision. Tonight, based on the information, my question would be, if we were to provide some relief to their costs, would it be reasonable for us to ask for something that is or can approach something that's attainable or affordable senior housing? Like the project that we're working on putting money away for. Not to get into that debate, but respecting the fact that that we've been talking about the need to do this for some time. So
that speaks to, if I can just help Mara out, that speaks to Mara's comment about the change of use, that the facility currently is a long-term care facility. You're suggesting that it perhaps could be changed into some type of apartments, which may or may not be affordable seniors housing. And if they are, that's a change of use. So then they would require DCs to be paid, whoever the owner would be of that structure.
No, that's not that is true, but that's not what I was referring to. I was referring to the fact they were saying that my earlier question was, with some of the senior apartments, were they independent living? Okay, which is the other aspect that quite apart from Jarlette, what we've been talking to in terms of affordable senior housing. We want something to be brought through the county or by somebody. Is this another outlet? And if we provided an incentive for them to build by reducing our DCs, could we ask reasonably that they offer affordable housing, some amount?
They're not in the room to ask that question. So you're right.
I know.
Yeah. And that makes it difficult, doesn't it?
So we could refer this back to staff saying, could we, having had this discussion and seeing that the council is willing to work with them to bring this to our community and to our seniors, could we refer some of these ideas back to them, prepare them for another discussion and come back? Mm-hmm. I'd be prepared to, I think I'm at the stage where I'd be comfortable putting a motion forward with a little bit more advice from my colleagues and staff to say, why don't you come back? Is this time dependent, really critical?
Let's get that answered first. Mara, how time dependent is this on our friends at Jarlette?
I don't think it would be a problem to push this to the next council meeting for a discussion with Jarlette.
Then I would move that we refer this back to staff, to Kelly and to Mara and John. Bring some of these questions back to them, and hopefully they may have been watching and heard some of this, and let's come back and have a more fulsome discussion.
Okay, is there a seconder? Is there a seconder to refer it? Councillor Broderick, thank you. So on the motion it's defer and refer. On the motion to refer, there's generally no debate on defer, but you've heard a good explanation of it. So I'm prepared to call the motion. If there is any objection, I'd like to know. Madam Clerk, we'll call the motion to refer. Those in favor of referring the motion? And we are all voting, and I asked you to speak and you didn't, Madam Clerk. What would you like to say?
Sorry, Mayor Measures, I just wasn't quick on the punch there. Would you like me to read out the referral to make sure that I have the proper information in there for staff to bring back a further report?
Sure, please do.
Thank you.
All right.
Go ahead, Barry, while she's typing.
I do have the referral ready if council's.
I'm going to go to Barry first. Stand by, Sasha.
I would like to make an amendment to the referral.
Oh, good.
And the amendment to the referral is, I would like in that referral to come back with looking at giving a 50% discount on the 49 care beds that are being reduced. Simply, there's 49 existing care beds, not bears, care beds that are being transferred from the old facility to the new facility. I mean, I deal with long-term care at the county all the time. This is something we need. It's something we need in our community. I agree, we're not in the position to offer, huge reductions, but option number 2 says transfer the 49 care bed DCs from the office. I would say offer 50% discount of the 49 care bed DC. So I'd like to have that included in the referral when they come back with information.
I think that's a simple request. Madam Clerk, are you good with that? Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, as a mover, I would see that as a friendly motion, as long as it's positioned as one of the things that we want to talk to you about.
Yeah, we're going to get to Phyllis. Go ahead, Phyllis. Sorry, Councillor Deneen.
Thank you. I'm just, that sounds a little more reasonable to me as well. And just, I'm looking at numbers and depleting the tax stabilization account.
No.
I can't go with the option 2 even, because that's still going to leave us 209,000 in the 209,000 looking for some place to take it. And if we have to hit our existing taxpayers with that, I'm just not happy with that. So I'd be interested to see what people think about what Barry has said for an amendment. Thanks.
Yeah, well, again, that would be once it comes back to council with Jarlett in participation.
Right.
So I think that's where we're going to be at. That's what this friendly addition would be to the motion to defer. John Lamers, did you have something else?
Yeah, just to Councillor Deneen, it's only 50% of that 709.
Yeah.
Through your worship to Councillor Lamers, yes, I realized that. Kelly mentioned that our tax stabilization account was at about, I believe she said, 500,000, and
in that
so
neighborhood,
that in that neighborhood. So I don't want to go with option 2 is what I was trying to say at the 709 and deplete it and still have a residual amount of 209 outstanding. That's why I thought Barry's maybe just go with the 50% of the 49% or 49 existing care beds. Sounds more reasonable to me, which would be in the neighborhood of about 300,000, but I'm just rough estimating. Thanks.
Okay, so we're still amending our deferral. Councillor McKechnie.
Referral.
Sorry, deferral. Same. Okay, it's not the same, but similar. Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I have the clerk read the referral along with the amendment? And my concern here is that by adding this amendment, we're actually making a decision here. We're somewhat making a decision on how much money we're going to reduce these development charges by. But if I could just have the whole thing read again.
I'm all in. I want to hear the whole thing read, and I know Sasha's got it ready. John Ferguson, no, go ahead, and then I'm going to go to Sasha. John Ferguson, yes, go ahead.
No, I just, it sounds like we're trying to negotiate. And I don't think that's something that we should do in open session. I don't think we should negotiate with ourselves, so to speak, before we have perhaps a discussion with Jarlett to find out what they're prepared to do. Some questions need to be answered, such as, is it independent living? Is it a senior accommodation, as I think Councillor Patterson alluded to? And I think the concern that Deputy Mayor Burton has as well, because they're trying to create more opportunities to keep our seniors from moving out of the community. And so what are they prepared to do? I think that's one of our goals. I think the big question is, if it's one of our goals, if we see that as an issue in our community, will it meet that? And I think we should have that discussion with them so that we can nail that down, and also understand if we are getting into something that could reduce potentially seniors living, what exactly is that reduction? And I don't think we know what that is. So I think,
Okay.
I think we should, I see what Deputy Mayor Burton's trying to say, but I don't think we should negotiate with ourselves before we get there.
All right, so I look at it like this, council and staff. We have 4 options that have been put together by our staff. The deputy mayor's brought forward another option. So I look at it as option 5. And we're still differing to have a discussion with the proponents from Jarlette as to what their exact intention is, to help flesh out some of these questions. And it would be my great hope that if council supports going to another meeting with our friends from Jarlette, that we'll take advice from the clerk as to whether we can go in camera and have some of these discussions in a negotiation fashion and some of it in open session. So let's get to that point first. That's where I'm hoping. I'd like to halt the debate since we have a motion to refer, and I would like to call the motion. All those in favor?
Oh, Mayor Measures.
Madam Clerk, you got to speak up then. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. I would like to read out the referral just to make
Yes.
sure we have all the information. So currently the referral that's on the floor is, it's moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Broderick. Be it resolved that the report FIN-004-2022 be referred back to staff to provide the opportunity to discuss additional ideas regarding development charges and affordable senior housing to Jarlette, and also outline the option to giving a 50% reduction on the 49 existing care beds, with the report to be brought back to the next council meeting, and that Jarlette be invited to the council meeting to answer any of council's questions.
The clerk has read the motion. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? We'll carry the motion, so we'll defer it as the motion says. All right, I'm going to take a moment of privilege, and I would like to say a couple comments. Mr. Ferguson and Ms. Helmke, I find it very, very problematic to be receiving reports with all these options. And I request that we have a meeting to discuss that, to get the clarification about how we can better execute council meetings so council can make decisions. Given that reports come in with options, they become very problematic when we're dancing around as to which one it is. If it's going to be a straight up political decision, just tell us that. And then we know what we're dealing with. But we're counting on our staff to bring us options and to give us their advice in their reports. And so then council can make decisions. So I would like to see us resolve this, because to be honest, as the role of mayor, this is the most frustrating part, is dealing with reports that have these options and trying to be balanced and let everybody have an opportunity to speak and keep it organized. So I'm just putting that out there as my point of privilege for now. We'll talk about it later. All right, council. Legislative Services Clerk. Speaking of clerks, let's move on. Extension of virtual council meetings and board meetings. That's not a surprise to anybody. Recommendation be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, receive report LS 003-2022, extension of virtual council meeting and board committee meetings dated January 17, 2022. And item 2, the council support continuing with virtual council, board, and committee meetings for an additional 4-month period based on regulations and recommendations from the Medical Officer of Health for the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, and that staff continually review the feasibility of returning to in-person meetings in a hybrid approach and provide a follow-up report to council in May of 2022. I have a mover and a seconder on the motion, please. Mr. Broderick, Mr. Dean. Go ahead, Sasha. Would you like to say anything about this?
Thank you, Mayor
Madam Clerk?
Measures. Yes, thank you, Mayor Measures, for you, to the rest of council. Obviously, when we brought the report back in September for remaining virtual until the new year, we didn't expect that we would be in this position. We thought we would be actually in the position to be able to recommend going to a hybrid meeting approach. Obviously, the current health situation has taken a turn. And we're cognizant of that, and the health and safety of both council, staff, and the public is at top priority. With us providing this recommendation to council, it doesn't mean that we haven't done work in the background to be able to facilitate a hybrid meeting. As I've outlined in my report, we have purchased an OWL 365 camera. We do have provisions in place so that if a positive uptake happened with the current health restrictions and the current health situation, that we would be ready to move forward and we wouldn't have to wait until May. I've just added that we bring a report back in May so that I'm not having to consistently come back every day to council asking for an extension, and it gives a little bit of consistency to our committees and boards that they know that they are virtual for a certain period of time. But staff is working very hard in the background to be ready to facilitate hybrid meeting approach, or you know what, be allowed in the council chambers without a hybrid meeting approach. That would be the greatest outcome for us.
Fair enough. Members of council, you got any questions to our staff? Both the CAO and the clerk are here to help answer these questions. All right, nobody has any questions? Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I look forward to you updating us as soon as possible. Members of council, you've seen the motion and we have a mover and seconder. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? Yes, all those in favor. And that carries. Thank you very much. Continue with virtual meetings. Now we have considerations for putting shipping containers or storage containers. Shipping/storage containers. Okay, this is a long recommendation, and I'll look for a mover and seconder, and then I will ask for a Mara to give us an update. Okay, recommendation be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive report LS 004/2022, considerations for permitting shipping storage containers dated January 17, 2022, and item 2, that council acknowledge that property owners placing shipping containers on their properties are required to obtain a building permit pursuant to the Ontario Building Code. And item 2, the council directs staff to enforce the current zoning bylaw regulations prohibiting shipping storage containers in any zone of the township, prioritizing the enforcement on properties that are in zoned residential, B, all zoned where there is more than one shipping container on a property. Item C, all zones where the shipping container is not being used for storage accessory to a permitted legal, commercial, industrial, or agricultural use on the property. Item D, all zones where the shipping container is unsightly and or causing a nuisance. And item E, all zones where the shipping container does not meet the setbacks for an accessory building. Okay, can I get a mover and seconder on this motion? And we're gonna have a discussion. We're gonna go Mr. Lamers and Mr. Burton. Mr. Lamers moving it, seconded by Deputy Mayor Burton. And Mr. Burton, you like to speak first, or you want to go to Mayor Burton first? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to make some minor amendments to the recommendation. And first of all, I want to thank Mara and her team and everybody at in the clerk's department and bylaw. This has been quite a project to put together, and I know I'm the one who put it forward. Agree with everything that's in here. The only thing I struggle with is that in item number 3, item B, all zones where there is more than one shipping container on property. Well, if we have a storage facility that is zoned to be a storage facility, then obviously they're going to have more than one. They're going to have more than one container on it. So recognizing that every container is going to have a building permit for it. And so I understand all that. But I just think, we need to amend that to, so that places that are going to have more than one container, that we can facilitate that. Obviously, it's not going to apply for any residential because they're not allowed. Then the other amendment I'd like to make is that in a commercial or industrial application, the total square footage of containers cannot exceed the size of the principal building. In other words, if you got a 1,000 square foot main building that's used as a storage facility, it can't have 2,000 square feet of containers. So I think those are the amendments I'd like to make to this.
All right. Mara's got her hand up right away. I mean, I can ask for a seconder on your amendment since we're already got a mover and seconder, and then we can let Mara answer since you've put it on the floor, Deputy Mayor. Is there a seconder on the Deputy Mayor's? Councillor Lamers, you're seconding? Thank you. Madam Clerk, please record that and we'll go right to Mara. Hi, Mara. Do you want to
Hi,
speak
thank
about
you,
your report as well as the additional recommendations?
Yes, I'll speak to the recommendations first, so while they're fresh in my mind, so I don't make any errors. I don't have any issues with the amendment that Deputy Mayor has put forward. I just want to say that if there is a situation where we have mini storage as permitted use, if the applicant applies for a building permit to turn those into buildings that would be legal under the building code, and they do their site plan and all of that sort of thing, then they could have more potentially. So if that is a concern, but I do think I understand where the Deputy Mayor is coming from, but I could now turn to try to give you a bit of an explanation of the report, if that's all right.
Tell you what we'll do first. I'm just going to make sure that the clerk is recording the amendment then. You got it understood, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. I will need some clarification as we go through. Deputy Mayor Burton provide clarification now, or if you want to ask any further questions, I can get clarification in a minute.
Okay. All right. We'll then go right to Mara Burton, and you can tell us about your whole report, because I can see that there's a significant amount of work that went into this.
The first thing I have to say is that Sasha actually put a large amount of effort into this, this report and into the research of this, actually. So it was very much a joint effort, and also want to thank Scott McLeod and Joe Paddock for helping us with this too. So it was, again, a joint effort. We certainly, as staff, we looked at this in a number of different ways. We gave it, we turned it sideways. We looked at it backwards. We tried to find way forward based on the direction that we were given. And what we found that we were doing is creating a parallel system to the systems that already exist at the municipality. So we were creating a licensing system that was very much like a building, like building code. We were creating the licensing system would also have provisions that would reflect setbacks and coverage and things like that, that the zoning bylaw already covers. In regard to annual fee in a registry to try to offset taxes and development charges. Well, these things already all exist when an applicant makes a building permit to take a shipping container and basically turn it into a building, put a proper foundation under it and so on. Through the research, that is how other municipalities are dealing with this. And from a liability point of view, we thought probably best to stick with the existing systems that the municipality has in place, particularly for building code. We have actually issued building permits for the conversion of storage containers into buildings before. We have a couple up at Peace Natural. Some of you might remember that. So, I certainly appreciate that the idea behind this was how can we help our community where they're looking for storage and they want an easy way to get it. And what we found and concluded amongst the staff level anyway is this is exactly why people aren't applying for building permits, because they are subject in some cases, not if it was accessory to an agricultural operation, but in some cases they are subject to development charges, and they're subject to a building permit application. They may be subject to an alteration to their site plan agreement. And these are all of the reasons that people aren't doing it. So what we've concluded was that even if we were able to put in a parallel licensing regime for storage containers or for shipping containers, people probably wouldn't follow it anyway. So that's where we got to the point of, and I can look to Sasha to help me with all of this, but that's where we got to the point of really this comes down to an enforcement thing. And, we, the municipality, enforce our bylaws as we see fit. And we felt that, really what we have to do is sort of target that enforcement. And just to remind all of you, this all started probably about 2.5 years ago, maybe a little more than that,
I
where
think it's more. Yeah.
yeah, I think it may be more. It may have started through the housekeeping where we were differentiating what a shipping container was from a moving container, because we allowed people to have a moving container while they were actually moving. So we started putting these things in the bylaw, and that's where I think all of this discussion on shipping containers came to be. And, you know, as bylaw goes around the municipality, we've certainly found quite a few of them. And, you know, just to relate to the cannabis concerns, you know, we certainly don't want to be the shipping container of Simcoe County either. You know, we don't want the township of Clearview to become the shipping container capital. So we thought we should really talk about going back to the enforcement. We started with the education campaign that Councillor Patterson started us on, and a lot of these things kind of came out of the woodwork through that process, which has all been a good thing. You know, all of this has been a bit of an evolution. And in the end, where we've come back to is, let's do enforcement, but let's target that enforcement to the containers that are really, you know, the people who are really speeding more above the speed limit than some that are just sort of, you know, speeding a little bit. I don't know if Sasha wants to add anything to that. To that, it doesn't make them legal unless they apply for their building permit and go through the process. But I think it comes down to, you know, really what we want to enforce at this time. So again, I could maybe turn to Sasha if she wants to add anything, because she was
All right.
very
Sasha
instrumental in this report. So
no doubt, no doubt. Sasha Helmke, I'm sure you put a lot of effort into this report as well. And I appreciate the fact that there's great collaboration between departments when we have these issues that touch both departments or many departments at one time. So Sasha, what's your comment on the recommendation as presented?
Thank you, Mayor Measures, through you to the rest of council. Mayor actually perfectly summed up the report really well. I don't have any further comments. We've outlined everything in the report that we thought council would want to see. It really is about an enforcement issue, and I think the recommendation that we've provided to council will help us address some of these issues in a certain way. And as Mayor said, address those big time speeders in the area so that we can kind of move towards not having those shipping containers and act as a deterrent for maybe other people that are looking to bring shipping containers into the area.
All right. Now on to the amendment that the deputy mayor put on. Have you, do you have any questions or you want some clarification on that amendment before we have a fulsome discussion on the whole recommendation?
I do. Thank you, Mayor Measures. So I am looking for some clarification from the deputy mayor. So currently as the amendment, I have moved by Deputy Mayor Burton, seconded by Councillor Lamers. Be it resolved that the motion before council be amended as follows: that Part B of Section 3 of the motion read, all zones where there is more than one shipping container on a property, except for where the property has legally been permitted by the township to have storage containers as part of their commercial storage business, and add that in commercial and industrial zones that the total square footage of the, and I'm looking for some direction or Deputy Mayor Burton to reread that part of his amendment.
So what? So that the total square footage of multiple containers cannot exceed the principal building. That's the best terminology I can come up with. And yeah, my analogy is if you got a 1,000 square foot building, you can't have 2,000 square feet of containers. That's my analogy. But I think that wording is pretty simple. I see Mara nodding her head, so I think that terminology is okay.
Can I just ask a clarification then on the word principal building? Mara, is there something in reference to that on a site plan on a principal building?
Yes, actually, I think we can work with that. Basically, the principal building is the building that is the principal use on the property, and then you would have storage buildings would be accessory to that. But I think we can work with that from a bylaw enforcement point of view, that wording, yes. And unless anyone else has something to say about that, I think I'm okay with that. Sasha is in charge of bylaw enforcement, so she
okay. Yeah, I just wondered if it's something in the building code, if there's something about that on a commercial site, whether what is identified as the principal building, right?
We really do have to look at each case on a case-by-case basis.
Sure.
Right. So if for, let's take Lafreniere, for example, Their main building would be their principal building would be their main building where they have their automotive display and their sales offices and things like that. And then
The
they do
service
have-
center and so on, yeah.
Right, exactly. So that would be considered their principal building. And then their secondary building where they have their storage would be accessory. So
Right.
you do have to kind of look at each one on a case-by-case basis, but that would be an example.
Okay. That's it. I didn't mean to make that complicated, but I just thought it was a good question about the word principal building. Did I see a card? Was that Tom? Was that your card? And then
Yes.
Doug? Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, so I'm not clear on the terms, the storage business. Everyone that runs a commercial, agricultural, and industrial legal business has need for storage. And it might be, and if this says, as long as it's an addition to their business, you're trying to limit it. But you also, in the discussion, I think it was Deputy Mayor used the term the storage business. So are we suggesting, I don't understand how a storage business that normally would have concrete buildings, okay, they go through the whole process. I'm not sure if they're allowed to do that now under this provision, these suggestions, or they're not, because you say all zones where there is more than one shipping container on a property. Well, I can think of some that have made it shipping containers their primary buildings. The majority of the buildings are now shipping containers. So they have more than one. So are we going to enforce? How are we going to enforce that situation?
Okay, I'd like to turn to Mara. Mara could pull up the official plan and maybe quote from that. Mara?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Patterson. I certainly understand the question and the confusion. So
yes.
I'm just looking at our zoning bylaw under the industrial, and I think the intent here is for, and I'm actually trying to find the actual word, but it's basically public storage or public mini storage, I think is what
Right.
Deputy Mayor Burton is getting at. The other primary use would be warehouse. We do have warehousing as a primary use. So what I take there is that is specifically the storage business. So it wouldn't be that storage would be accessory to another business. It would be that storage is the primary use.
And under this bylaw, under these changes, they would be allowed.
Well, they have to convert it to a building through a building code. So they have to put a proper foundation. They'd have to do site planning the same as anyone else. So they'd have to pay development charges, building permit fee, and that sort of thing. So what we do is, we do have architectural control. And so a storage container typically would not be something that would be permitted outside of an industrial use. So if we're talking about, warehousing and mini storage, that is an industrial use. They may be required to paint it, to clean it up, to make them look, proper, because we do look for our industrial parks to have some integrity that way. But our primary architectural controls would be in the residential and the commercial areas. There's more flexibility in our industrial areas.
I find it difficult to talk about this without being specific, and I don't want to be specific here in case that I would injure any party's reasonable expectation to continue using this stuff. I see it, the onus has been on the township to get a handle on this, and we haven't. Okay, for whatever reason, I'm not suggesting anyone was at fault, it's just that it's gone ahead of us. And now we're trying to fix it, in my mind. And we have non-conforming uses out there now that when I read this, it suggests that they have significant work to do because of our enforcement to make it right. Or are we suggesting that we're starting now and some of the legal non-conforming are going to be just that, legal non-conforming, grandfather? Because we've let this progress far beyond what our intent was when we did the housekeeping.
Okay, I'd like to halt for a second. I'm going to go to Mara, but I want to acknowledge that John Ferguson, our CAO, did indicate his hand. John, did you want to jump in right now, or did you want to go back to?
I'll come in after a fact. I'm interested in the answer to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Mara Burton, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So there are no legal non-conforming shipping containers in the township because we haven't allowed them in our zoning bylaw.
We have not allowed it. Is that what you said?
No, we have not allowed them. Now, so there's a distinction between a shipping container as being popped down on a piece of property and a shipping container that's been converted to a building under the Ontario Building Code. They are two different things. So that's the distinction. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. But then it makes any current storage facilities that are built on a sizable number of shipping containers as non-conforming, illegal. So what is the remedy?
That is correct.
So what is our remedy for that under the enforcement? I appreciate what the clerk said in terms of we're taking an enforcement view on this as well. So where are we on that?
Okay, well, I'll try to speak to that, and if I can, through the mayor to Councillor Patterson, and perhaps Clerk Helmke can help me with this. But my understanding is, we started this whole thing doing enforcement, and then there was this sort of way we want to look into allowing them. So I do think that during this period of time, there have been some people who saw that, well, we started out doing enforcement, then we said, well, we're now going to look, do a paper to council or a recommendation to council as to what were, some options. That during that period of time, this past year or more.
Or four.
Or more, yeah, or four.
It's been more.
Those shipping containers have never been legal, okay?
Right.
If something is coming up for council discussion, that just because it's on the table for discussion, no bylaw has been passed, no public meetings have been held, no change to the zoning bylaw has taken place. People out there in the real world may have taken advantage of this period of time, but that does not make them, and I'm not speaking to anyone specific, that does not make them legal. Right. They are still not legal until they're turned into a building, which is the same way we've been treating this for quite some time. Because again, prior to all of this, we issued some permits to convert shipping containers into buildings. It's just that it's rare. And the reason it's rare is because people use shipping containers because they can get around all of those things.
But we specifically said during the housekeeping, because we took great pains to explain what we meant by the shipping container, that for the reasons that they were hazardous largely, we would not be endorsing the use of shipping containers for mini storage businesses. Okay, and
That's
now
correct.
it seems like we've morphed now, and I think it was a reasonable part of the earlier request that set this report in motion was that, well, there's a reasonable request for like you said, legal businesses that need extra storage, and farm use, and other commercial offices that would find the utility of a freight container a good one, and so now I can see us allowing that. But I'm asking the question. Well, for example, we just approved a regular mini storage installation on 91, just west of Stayner. Now, could they have built with this bylaw? Could they have built that whole mini storage building with containers?
That's a very good question, and certainly one that comes to mind to me as well, because through this whole process, when we worked with the building department basically, if somebody is converting a shipping container into a building, then it's not really a shipping container anymore. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't have to do certain things to that shipping container to your point, make sure it's safe, make sure that it meets some architectural integrity, and they would still have to pay their development charges and all the other things. So I think and Scott McLeod has jumped up, so maybe Scott can, come to my rescue by trying to answer your questions. But I think the answer may be potentially yes, that they could indeed apply and do that. They still have to do site planning. They still have to meet architectural integrity and all of the other things that we require. And so I maybe, now that Scott has come on board here, which I appreciate, perhaps Scott can help us a little bit with this too, because we do want to make sure that we're consistent. This has been a bit of a learning experience as we've all pooled our minds together here at staff level. And we want to be sure that we are consistent in our approach.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. First of all, welcome, Scott McLeod. I certainly want to hear your input on this very important issue. Deep in your report, Sasha and Mara, there's a comment about the city of Hamilton, and the city of Hamilton refer to shipping containers as a shipping container if it's being used for carriage of freight or shipping. When it's not being used for those purposes, it's then a building. And this makes it just clear that that is the case. It's either a shipping container being used for shipping and moving a freight, or it's a building. So it's one or the other. And I think that's an interesting point that was put in your report. Mr. McLeod, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. I just thought I'd add some clarification here. So I think, there's a lot of confusion around this topic, and there has been for some time. But I think at the end of the day, what this report is saying is nothing's changing. Storage units, shipping containers, I should say, are prohibited under the bylaw, and they continue to be prohibited under the zoning bylaw, even with this report. Currently, if you want to use a shipping container as a building, the only way to legally do that in Clearview Township is to get a building permit. And after this report, that will continue to be the case. What this report really, in the recommendations A through E, is it's council's opportunity to direct staff from an enforcement standpoint where they want them to focus their enforcement. And what it's saying is, all the zones that are residential, that will be an enforcement priority. Every other property in the township, regardless of use, it will be if there is more than one shipping container on the property. C is basically saying if it's being used legally associated with an industrial, commercial, agricultural property, then that's okay. And then it says, even if it's less than one, if it happens to be unsightly and unkept, that can be very quickly become a priority. And then it also says where it doesn't meet the current zoning setback. So it's encroaching or it's getting too close to a neighboring property owner, that becomes a priority. To be clear, they are all prohibited, but they can be legally established on a property if a person wishes to go through a building permit. This is just purely setting up priorities. So it's not taking any of the existing ones out there where they have 2 or 3 or 15. It's basically saying if you have more than one, we're prioritizing our enforcement on those properties first. And then when we get through all them, then we'll move back on the lower priorities.
All right.
Does that help?
Well, it clearly does, and I know the Hamilton reference and others. In fact, some of the business people that are in the business of selling containers have a nice informative codicil put into their summary, putting into their own advertisement, saying make sure you understand the zoning bylaws and get under the Ontario laws, zoning, the building code. You can treat that as a building. But then it becomes a building. It's no longer a shipping container. Can't be used to haul freight anymore. And you can't just buy a bunch of them and plop them down on your property. And so we have some of those though. So we have, I want to be clear, there may be a significant effort now for some people who have a business, that made a business out of shipping containers, not buildings yet. Okay, because they haven't applied, at least my knowledge, they haven't applied for a building permit. Okay, they haven't possibly rezoned their property for the use. You know, they may have restrictions in terms of lot coverage, you know, that sort of thing. So what I read here is you're going to enforce their compliance, which means they may have to stop their business until they comply, or, you know, there has to be some provision. We're a reasonable township, but that's what I read here. So sure, the one on I talked about the recent one that we had built on 91. Sure, they took the shell and took those shells and made them into buildings. Okay, and we have provisions to do that. But there's some that have not done that. They've just essentially used shipping containers on bare ground. So you're saying they will be subject to enforcement?
I think that's the gist of this report, is that it is an enforcement report.
Yeah.
And it's laying out the priorities as to what is going to be enforced through the limited resources we have in our bylaw department. I'd like to go to Mr. Ferguson first, Sasha. John, you put your hand up a couple of times and he also doesn't have a yellow card. So go ahead, John.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one of the things that in reading this and trying to decipher, Scott touched on the residential piece, and then there's the commercial piece. And the residential piece, I think it's restricted. You can't have a container on your property. You may be able to do something as an outbuilding, but you would have to have a permit and treat it like a building. Is that correct, Scott? So, Your Worship, sorry.
So again, currently they're not permitted anywhere unless they obtain a building permit. And under these 5 restrictions, this is really just setting out what the township is going to prioritize first for enforcement. So they're prohibited everywhere unless they've obtained a building permit.
So they'd have to get, even on a residential property, they would have to get well, obviously on a residential property, they'd have to get a building permit.
Yeah, and they could get a building permit in some instances, depending on where they are. But we also have architectural control standards, which in most residential zones would limit that, you know, being in character with the buildings in the property. And architectural control is really Mara's area of expertise. But outside of the residential areas, and Mara spoke to this earlier, we have had applications over the years where people have utilized shipping containers as either a component of their building or fully as a building, whether it be commercial or in residential. And so you just don't know they exist out there because a lot of them are in rural and remote areas. And, you know, the majority of what we see are the illegal storage shipping containers that are an enforcement issue that currently exist.
So on the commercial side, it suggests you can have more than one container, again, as long as you get a building permit. But is that container to be for their own storage as opposed to being a commercial storage facility? Is there a difference there as it relates to commercial approval?
Okay, so Mara's got her fingers up on that one. Go ahead, Mara.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through to our CAO, John. It depends on what the zoning is, what the setbacks are, and what the use is. So we would treat the application of basically converting a shipping container into a regular building like we would with any other building construction. So if they're looking to use a shipping container as a storage building or whatever, it has to meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw for a building, and then apply for the building permit through the building department. So really what we're talking about here is that everything would be status quo, and that we're prioritizing the enforcement to being those that are really the ones that are offending the bylaw the most to start with. Does that answer your question?
Okay, John, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I understand the enforcement will begin with the residential area. My question specifically is, if I own a commercial property, I can have more than one storage container if I get a permit. Now, if I have a primary business and I want to put a storage container to store equipment from my primary business on site, and I may need 1, 2, or 3, as long as I get a permit and I'm storing my own stuff for my business, typically meeting all the other requirements, you get approval. If I have a piece of land and I want to put storage containers on my property with the permit, but I want them to be the primary business of where it's providing storage to outside customers, is there a difference in how that can be approved or not approved?
Go ahead, Mara. And then the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, you could do that so long as you meet all the other requirements of the zoning bylaw and building code and so on. We're not making a distinction in the zoning bylaw or in the Ontario Building Code, whether you're using a storage container as a building for a primary use or a secondary use. From an enforcement point of view, we are, but from a use point of view, we're not. So, but there are other things that come in play as well, right?
Deputy Mayor Burton.
Yeah, so in response to CA Ferguson, I don't want to put words in Mayor's mouth or anything like this, but my interpretation is you can use these as a storage or rent it out as storage, provided, and that's the big provision, that you're zoned to have a storage facility, like a public storage facility. You'd have to be zoned in an area that would allow you to have a public storage facility, like a mini stores and something like that. And so if that's the case, yes, if you're not zoned in that, then you can't do it. Am I correct, Mara?
Mara, what's the zoning for that?
Okay, so the zoning for mini storage and warehousing would be one of our industrial zones. And so I think one of the other questions was, okay, if it wasn't industrial and someone was wanting to repurpose, let's say, a storage container for a commercial use on a property, would they also be allowed to do that? And the zoning bylaw doesn't distinguish that. What the zoning bylaw distinguishes is you can't have a shipping container and just plop it on the property without turning it into a building under the building code. Once you turn it into a building under the building code, in a way, it could go anywhere so long as it meets the setbacks, the use of the zoning bylaw, and the architectural control of control documents that the township has.
Deputy Mayor Burton, anything further?
No, I think Mayor and I are saying the same thing and speaking the same language.
I think you are too. I think I had Doug McKechnie with a card up earlier and I kind of missed you there, Doug. Sorry about that. You're over? Okay.
No, my question got answered quite a while ago, so I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I did have you written down. And I see Tom had his card up once again. Mr. Patterson, go ahead.
Yeah, so the point being that if you had applied, this is an enforcement issue, so we're talking about people who aren't complying yet, and we're trying to give them a solution. So if you apply now for what you already have, because it's built, you've got X number of these things on your property. Here's what you have to do. We spell it all out. So one of the things is that you're in an ag zone and you're running a mini storage, and you have to then be zoned industrial.
Mara. That's a good point. That's a good point, Tom. Mara.
Okay, so if I may, I'll just give a little history here. So many years ago, the municipality allowed public mini storage as an agricultural use in the agricultural area. We can't do that anymore because it's not consistent with the provincial policies or even our official plan necessarily. and certainly not our zoning. So anyone who is currently using shipping containers in the rural area for mini storage is in non-compliance. And if they don't have zoning for public storage. So if that's the case, and they were legal non-conforming, their existing mini storage is legal non-conforming and they're in an agricultural zone, then they have the opportunity to potentially apply for a minor variance to the Committee of Adjustment for an extension to their existing legal non-conforming use if they want to expand it to add more mini storage. Whether they add that mini, if the Committee of Adjustment were to approve it, it might require a site plan agreement. It may not, depends on the circumstance. And if the Committee of Adjustment were to approve it, so long as the owner of that mini storage company in an agricultural area took those storage containers and converted them to buildings for the purpose of mini storage, that would be allowed. But yes, they would have to do the conversion.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I think we've had a good talk, Tom.
No, I've exercised all my what ifs. And
Okay.
This is going to be, in some cases, a very difficult thing to enforce. So that's why I think the clarity is absolute. And, it hasn't been the case.
I agree.
It has not been the case. So
I agree.
I want to do what you've just said tonight, but I'm not confident that we have the resources or even the will to do some of this to our citizens. So I really think we're going to have more discussion on how we apply this. And I would suggest that we need to have an open mind to make further changes if we find that we've kind of overshot the mark here. First, we were too slow, and now we're running too quickly to comply. So.
Okay, thank you. Mara Burton is smiling with her fingers up like a good Boy Scout or Girl Guide.
She keeps covering it with the two. I kind of wonder what she's actually saying.
Well, I guess what I would like to do is I want to assure council that we obviously have to use our bylaw enforcement resources, in the best way we can.
Yes.
And so, bylaw has the authority to, find sort of the ones that are speeding the most and start there. And, it does take time. These things don't happen overnight. We do have a long way to go. I don't disagree with Councillor Patterson. We have a long way to go. I can also tell you that I do believe that during this period of time, and particularly with COVID, a lot of our residents have been doing things that they have been doing. And there is no excuse for that. We have always been available. We've had people building without building permits, fairly substantial properties, thinking that they could do that under COVID. Certainly not. We have had people who've been bringing shipping containers in by the multitude on a property and running businesses out of them. And that has never been something that they would be allowed to do. We absolutely, in my opinion, need to start getting on top of some of these rather serious situations. Because if we don't, again, we're going to become the shipping capital of Simcoe County, and we need to start somewhere. And we need to start reversing this train, to use a shipping container, or this ship, and turn it around. And yes, it won't happen overnight, but it will happen.
Just to add a humorous point.
Yeah.
If this doesn't work and we're stuck, then the alternative is to get a canal and build a port and turn it into a container terminal. Because I'm telling you, we really do, but we have to use our good faith here too. I mean, but anyway.
I know what you're saying.
It's a mess. It's a mess.
It is. It's unfortunate. It is unfortunate, but to be realistic, it's understandable as to why residents would utilize these devices when they are very secure, very robust, very easy to move around, and very secure. and you know, to the point that that John Ferguson, our CAO, was bringing up, was about businesses that want to use them. If they're building a house and a contractor wants to deploy on a site, what a great way to store their tools and so on. They put them in there, they lock them up. It's a great way to do it. So they have a very good purpose, for sure. The challenge is that they're being repurposed for buildings, and that's why we have this continued debate and continued discussion on it. And I agree, it's a bit of a mess, and we're doing the best we can. And I wouldn't want to be the bylaw enforcement officer trying to interpret all the stuff that this council's coming up with and then trying to apply it in the real world. So I feel for them as well. So I would encourage Clerk Helmke to keep us up to date if there's anything that they're finding that's an issue that we need to hear from them. Council, I think we've had an excellent debate. We do have a motion. It does have an amendment. Can I ask, do you want it all reread since it's been about 45 minutes since we started this? I'm looking, I don't see any nodding of heads, so I'm
Yeah,
good.
reread. Yes, yeah, reread, please.
I will reread it and then I will ask the clerk to add the amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to receive report LS 004 2022, dated January 17, 2022. That council acknowledges that property owners placing shipping containers on their properties are required to obtain a building permit pursuant to the Ontario Building Code. And item 3, that council directs staff to enforce the current zoning bylaw regulations prohibiting shipping storage containers in any zone of the township, prioritizing enforcement on properties that are A, zoned residential, that are B, all zoned where there is more than one shipping container on a property. I'm going to defer to the clerk. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. So that amendment there is that Part B of Section 3 of the motion read, all zones where there is more than one shipping container on a property, except for where the property has legally been permitted by the township to have storage containers as part of their commercial storage business.
And then it says item C, all zones where the shipping container is not being used for storage accessory to a permitted legal, commercial, industrial, agricultural use on the property. Item D, all zones where the shipping container is unsightly and or causing a nuisance. And item D, all zones where the shipping container does not meet the setbacks for an accessory building.
And we have an additional item with the amendment and add that in commercial industrial zones, the total square footage of multiple containers cannot exceed the size of the principal building. So we'll need to vote on the amendment first and then the main motion as amended.
Okay, that's where I was going to get to. We're going to go to that then. All right, council, you've had the whole motion. You've had the 2 amendments. We're going to go with the 2 amendments together on this motion. That's moved by the deputy mayor and seconded by, I've forgotten.
Councillor Lamers.
Lamers. Thank you, John. You've been very quiet. This is for the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment. Are there those opposed? Okay, then the amendment carries. Thank you. Now, as the motion is now fully amended, and you've heard it as I've read it fully amended, I'm prepared to call the motion. Again, moved by Deputy Mayor Burton, seconded by Councillor Lamers. Is that correct?
Actually, the main motion is reversed. It's been moved by Councillor Lamers, seconded by Deputy Mayor Burton.
Thank you for the correction. Members of council, you've heard the motion read as amended. I'll call the motion. Those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much, everybody. Again, hard work. I hope that our bylaw team, do a good job for us, and I know they always will. So keep up the good work there, folks. Okay, council, it'll be a long meeting. I'm sorry, I'm feeling a little tired. Let's go to bylaws. It's our last page. Let's see here. We have 03. So 22-03 development and subdivision amending agreement with Ashton Meadows Phase 1A. Recommendation be resolved. Bylaw 21-03. Being a bylaw to authorize entering into a development and subdivision amending agreement with 863194 and 863195 Ontario Limited, be presented and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed on this 17th day of January 2022. We have a mover and seconder. Mr. Walker, Mr. Broderick. Mr. Walker, Mr. Broderick, thank you, sirs. You've heard the bylaw. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And the bylaw carries. Thank you very much. So Green Gauge Road, site plan agreement. Recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 22-04 being a bylaw to enter into a site plan agreement with M&H Longview Holdings, Inc. be presented and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed on the 17th day of January 2022. Can I have a mover and seconder on the Green Gauge bylaw? That be Deneen and Broderick. And before I call it, I just want to acknowledge that once we receive confirmation of financial, that this will all be signed by the clerk and the mayor. You've heard the bylaw. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Council, item 13 is the notice of motion, new business. I don't think there's anything. And bylaw to confirm is our next item. Recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 22-05 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the January 17, 2022 council meeting be presented and read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on the 17th day of January 2022. Can I have a mover and seconder on the bylaw? Mr. McKechnie, Councillor Deneen. And any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Confirmatory bylaw carries. Thank you very much, Council. If there's nothing further, we hope that our snowplow guys are out there doing their thing tonight and get us all ready for tomorrow morning. Also hope that our kids go back to school safely tomorrow. I have to understand the schools are going to be back if the buses are up and running and it's not a snow day. So I look for a motion to adjourn. Be it resolved, council meeting be adjourned 7:54 p.m. McKechnie and Lamers, all those in favor. And that carries, that motion carries. Council, we will see you at the budget workshop on Wednesday. And we look forward to that discussion and budget workshop session. All the best. Have a good evening.